All right, Mr. President, these gas prices right now are a double whammy for Michigan, for Detroit especially. Not only do we have to pay at the pump, but we also have an auto industry that's just getting rolling, and this really threatens to put the brakes on the car sales. I know you have long-range plans for alternative fuels, but we're really talking about what can you do right now immediately to bring sanity to these gas prices. That's what our viewers want to know. And in fact, one of our viewers, Jason Bartram, says, don't put a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound.
Well, look, this is obviously something that's affecting everybody, and we are looking at every option that's out there in terms of dealing with it. Now, I try to be honest with the American people when I made a presentation a couple of weeks ago, and I said there's no silver bullet. Part of what's happened is that the economy started growing again around the world, which means demand increased. That helps to raise prices. And then you've had some of these disruptions like Libya that have not been as bad as they might have been, but have spooked the world oil market. So we've got a real problem here. And obviously families day to day, they're driving to work, you know, and they're just watching their paychecks get whittled away. They need some relief. A couple of things that we can do right away. Number one, we've already, working with the auto industry in Detroit, made sure that we're increasing fuel efficiency standards on cars. That will lower demand and that will help reduce oil prices. We're making huge investments in alternative fuel vehicles, and again, that's something that we're partnering with Detroit on. So our investment in advanced battery technology, electric cars, all of that helps to reduce demand on oil. The other thing that I just did today was send a letter out to members of Congress. Right now we give about $4 billion in subsidies to oil companies through the tax code. Well, that makes no sense. Even their CEOs have admitted that when prices are like they are now, they don't need any incentive to go pump for more oil. And so we've got to make sure that we take those $4 billion and we reinvest it in things like alternative energy vehicles. And then we've got to continue to increase production. And U.S. oil production was at the highest level that it was last year that it's ever been. We've got to continue to do that. We can do it in a safe, effective way. We don't want a repeat of the oil spill that we had in the Gulf last year, but we've got to continue to make sure that U.S. production is strong. And finally, we are in a lot of conversations with the major oil producers like Saudi Arabia to let them know that it's not going to be good for them if our economy is hobbled because of high oil prices. They're better off bringing those oil prices down, working with us to try to increase supply so that the economy continues to grow over the long term. They'll be better off, and certainly we'll be better off.
Right now, the U.S. battery market's only about 4% of the world's share. So don't we risk becoming dependent on foreign batteries if we don't take maybe perhaps some of that $4 billion and invest it in, you know, we'd like Detroit's battery industry to get some of that money?
Well, you're exactly right. Now, here's the good news. Because of the investments we made in the Recovery Act, at the same time as we're making sure that we were fixing up the U.S. auto industry, we made huge investments in the battery industry, and we expect that in 5 years we could potentially have 50% or at least 40% of the world's battery markets. And we're seeing in Michigan a lot of companies that are starting to develop batteries. This is going to be the key to a affordable, effective, mass-produced electric car, is us reducing the cost of batteries, allowing them to store more energy for longer periods of time. Obviously, we've seen great work done by the big three in this area, but I think we can do even better.
We ask our viewers to submit questions to you, and I need to make sure I honor that. Other than gas, they really want to know about jobs. Even though unemployment is coming down ever so slightly in Michigan, it just somehow doesn't feel that way. So Nancy Paradis writes to us, Mr. President, my husband went back to school with no worker left behind. Still cannot find a job. We lost our home. We now live with family. We have a few weeks left on unemployment, then we have nothing. You need to help us, she writes. Help Michigan, we are suffering.
Well, look, I get about 10 letters every day from all across the country that I get 40,000, but I read 10 of them each night. And so many families are going through what your viewer just talked about. I mean, they've done all the right things. They're retraining. They are out there, you know, hitting the streets, knocking on doors, looking for work. The economy has grown. We've actually seen 2 million private sector jobs created over the last 13 months, but it's not happening as fast as people would like, and certainly not as fast as I would like. This is why it's so important in these budget debates that we're having, to make sure that even though we've got a serious deficit and a serious debt, we've got to start bringing it down. We've got to do it in a way that doesn't reduce economic growth right now. And we also have to make sure that we're investing in those kinds of things like advanced battery manufacturing that promise to create jobs over the medium and long term. So one of the good things that we were able to do on a bipartisan basis was back during the lame duck session in December, we were able to pass a payroll tax cut as well as a cut in business investment or taxes on business investment. When you combine those two things, we think that that's going to add additional jobs and businesses are going to have more incentive to invest. But we're going to keep on working until every single person out there who wants a job and is ready to work is going to be able to find one. But it's going to take more time than we would like, and I know how much people out there are suffering as a consequence.
Final question. The people of Michigan really helped put you in the White House this last election, but if you could read all of those thousands of letters we see, which I'm sure look a lot like some that you get also, and the emails and the posts we've gotten, you'd see just an absolute frustration and in some cases even anger by a lot of people in Michigan who just feel like you've let them down.
Well, you know, if you look at what we've done, if I hadn't acted, even against some pretty fierce opposition, we might not have a U.S. auto industry right now. We probably saved 1 million jobs across the Midwest, a big chunk of those in Michigan. And so, you know, it's always hard to make an argument that if we hadn't taken the steps that we did in the midst of the worst recession since the Great Depression, we would have tipped into a depression and things would be a lot worse. That's not relief for somebody who right now is looking for a job. And I understand those frustrations. That's, you know, part of my job is to make sure that regardless of how well I think we've done in playing a very tough hand, that we're not satisfied. And we just keep on working. And, you know, every morning when I wake up and every night when I go to bed, I'm thinking about those families that are out there struggling. And I do think it's important, though, for people to understand the economy, which was shrinking, is growing. We were losing hundreds of thousands of jobs every month. Now we're adding hundreds of thousands of jobs every month. We've seen the largest drop in unemployment since 1984. And so as tough as things continue to be, we are moving in the right direction, and we're going to continue to move in the right direction.
Mr. President, thank you for taking the time for us.
I really enjoyed it.
Thank you, sir.